Hello, Ryan Plash from Launchpad Dads here. I have a presentation that I gave at the At Home Dads Conference in September. I call it the Relationship Survival Toolkit: Better Partner Communication Using the 4 Signs of Relationship Trouble and the 5 Love Languages. Launchpad Dads is a program for fathers in the Twin Cities area and beyond. It consists of counseling, groups, classes, and resources. The blog can be found at discoverymentalhealth.com. All right, the 4 signs of relationship trouble are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. The 2 people that created these concepts are John Gottman with the 4 signs of relationship trouble and Gary Chapman with the 5 love languages. I invite you to research both of these authors further for more information on their concepts. All right, so Bob Ross is a very influential painter with the show The Joy of Painting, and I started off the presentation with a quote from him. Bob Ross talks about how you can start with a black canvas and make something beautiful from it, and he shows you exactly how to do that. And sometimes our relationships turn out to be black canvases, and that can be kind of difficult. So, but it doesn't mean it's hopeless. We can make something beautiful out of it still. It just takes some good work. So the first off is the 4 signs of relationship trouble. I chose the Swiss Army knife. Thought it might be appropriate for this. So sign number 1 is criticism. All right, so criticism is when you take a complaint and you make it about the person. In this case, it will be your partner. So you're always going to have complaints about the people you love, the people you live with, about your job. But when you take it a step further, you make it personal. You then are attacking that person. What are some signs of criticism? What is wrong with you? Forgot to sweep the floor? You always forget. Now, if you look at that one, forgot to sweep the floor is the complaint. You always forget is the criticism. You just don't care. You never listen to me. So we're always going to give criticism in the arguments that we have and in our relationship. But the key is to reminding yourself, 1, that you're doing it. And secondly, is this what you always do? Is this all you know how to give feedback is through criticism? Because it's worth taking a look at to see if you need to change it, if that's what you're doing. All right, sign number 2 is contempt. Contempt can be defined as the feeling that a person or a thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving scorn. Now, when Gottman's talking about contempt, he's talking about that last little part of it there. Someone who is deserving scorn. Some examples of contempt: sarcasm, cynicism, name-calling, eye-rolling, and mockery are all examples. So contempt comes from criticisms that build up after a long time. So it's the criticisms that we hold on to with our partner that creates this feeling that they are beneath you or deserving scorn. And it's typically demeaning and unloving. Gottman talks about how this contempt, how holding someone in contempt, is the most poisonous of the 4 signs of relationship trouble. And so we should be trying to pivot away from contempt if that's what we're doing in our relationship. Number 3 is defensiveness. So defensiveness is when you take a stand during an escalated argument to defend yourself, to get out of the responsibility. Doing so, you are telling the person that you love that the problem isn't with you, it's instead with them. Some signs of what happens when we become defensive. It leads to conflict escalation. it's okay to advocate for yourself and your needs in a marriage, in a partnership with someone. I think that what happens is if we're always on the defense, our partners aren't going to be heard. There's a lot of rich material in what they have to say, and it can make it very muddled and make them feel not heard if we're always trying to get out of the responsibility that we have to the partner. And so it's another way to escalate the conflict on the other side. One side is criticism and contempt. The other side is being defensive and coming from that angle. So it kind of sounds like, no, I don't do that, you're crazy. And you can see how there's a criticism within the defensiveness there. All right. So sign number 4 is stonewalling. Stonewalling is disengagement rather than a confrontation. It's tuning your partner's concerns out. It's ignoring and not responding to your partner. I wonder if you stonewall currently in your relationship. So some examples of stonewalling are when you're turning away from your partner and not responding, isolating from your partner, withdrawing, not making eye contact, being unresponsive. So there's just a lot that goes with it. It's a common trait or a common characteristic among men in marriages. They did research. I should say Gottman and his wife, Gottman and Julie, John and Julie Gottman, decided that they were going to do a bunch of research about this, and they found that husbands were much, much, much more likely to stonewall than wives were. But really, anybody in the relationship can do it. Maybe it feels normal, maybe it seems like a good idea, but what ends up happening is that the partner that's experiencing stonewalling gets even more upset because they're not being heard. They have these concerns and their needs aren't being met. And it's a withdrawal. So it's not very healthy to do. So kind of in summary of this, Gottman says that we're always going to be doing these things at one time or another. What you need to be concerned about is this your typical way of being in an argument? Is this your typical presentation? Because if any one of these 4 are your typical presentation, the idea is that we're going to have to pivot away from what we do and try to find another way to have a healthier relationship, especially a healthier relationship when we're arguing. All right, the 5 love languages. So Chapman talks about having a love fuel tank, and that's what this gas thing is here for. So he argues that at times in our marriage, the fuel tank is empty, and we can use the 5 love languages. We can use the one that is most important to our partners to fill it fast. That's the whole argument behind it. I want to put it out there, though, that he also states that all 5 of these are important. So we should be doing all 5 of these. Okay, love language number 1 is words of affirmation. So if you or your partner has the love language of words of affirmation, there's some tips that he gives in this. So it's about using encouraging phrases, and knowing that your tone makes a big difference in how something is received. Knowing what your partner wants to hear and saying those things to them, because that's important. And then expressing empathy with words of affirmation is very important in the overall presentation, and feeling in you being authentic, or in your partner being authentic, expressing this with you. So empathy the ability to feel what others are feeling based on what they tell you. And I just recommend that if feeling and makes you uncomfortable, or empathy is a trouble for you, and you have a partner whose love language is words of affirmation, that it's kind of something that you work towards or work with someone on. The second love language is quality time. So when you get married to someone, you a lot of times that quality times fades away, or when you're in a long-term relationship. So Gary Chapman talks about how we need to give your life to each other. And he says that this actually doesn't need to be that big of a deal. It can be achieved in as little as 20 minutes of dedicated time. So what is dedicated time? Well, he gives 5 things that dedicated time that you should do during this time with your partner. So the first one is eye contact. Second one is don't multitask. 3 is listen to feelings that your partner is sharing. 4 is observe body language. And 5 is refuse to interrupt. If you can do those 5 things in a 20-minute time span with your partner, their fuel tank, their love tank, will fill up fast. All right, so number 3 is receiving gifts. Now, this is pretty obvious, gift giving, but there's a couple of things to note with receiving gifts. Know what your partner wants, because it doesn't have to be of monetary value. So often is the case that somebody values gifts or receiving gifts, but they also don't want to spend a lot of money, or they don't want you to spend a lot of money on it, or maybe you don't want to have a lot of money spent on you. And so knowing the types of gifts that you should give your partner is very important. And then your very presence can be a gift. So knowing that your presence has a big part in this, and when you give your presence as a gift, you're going to have to be mindful of it. You're going to have to be mindful during it. All right. The fourth love language is acts of service. All right. So having a list of things that you want your partner to do, or your partner does for you, or your partner wants you to do for them, is a good, oh man, sorry about that. Let's do this. So number 4 is acts of service. So these are tasks that your partner wants you to do for them, or tasks that you would want your partner to do for you. So one thing to keep in mind is that lists help us think concretely. So maybe it is a good idea to make a list of things you'd like to see done, or responsibilities that you have towards your household, something on those lines. But you got to be careful, because when we put a list, it can also feel almost dehumanizing if it's taken to the extreme. Like this is all that you want. So that's why your lover is not a doormat. You should be communicating why you are willing to do these things for them, or or talking to them about how great it feels when they do these things for you. So keeping that communication there on top of the acts of service in the love language. All right. Number 5 is physical touch. So, keeping in mind, it depends on how and where you touch the person you love. And then touching someone wrong communicates the opposite of love. So, knowing what your partner likes or dislikes is very imperative to physical touch if that is your love language or your partner's love language. Also, Chapman is very careful in that he says that this love language does not equate to having sex. This is a different part of your relationship. And he gives an example in the book. He was interviewing a guy, and the guy at the end of the talk says, "Yeah, definitely physical touch is my love language. It's because when me and my wife have sex, I feel very loved by her." And Chapman, knowing that there might be a little bit more to the story, brings up this the fact that he says that now, earlier we were talking about how important it is that your wife give you compliments and tell you how good you're doing in the relationship. And so I'm wondering, let's say everything was okay in your relationship, and you were getting as much sex as you ever wanted. However, your wife did the opposite of telling you good things. She was telling you that you're a horrible person, or that you don't do anything right, or that how could anybody love you? Would you still feel loved by her? And this guy was like, no, I wouldn't feel loved by her. And so his love language was actually words of affirmation, because when you take sex out of physical touch, it's important, or it has a whole new meaning to it. So if your relationship is struggling with sexuality, I invite you to look outside of the love languages to work on that, because physical touch, none of the love languages really has that in there. All right, so now the love languages has a quiz. It's about 30 questions long, and it will tell you which one is your primary one and which one is your secondary one. I like having a list of two. If two are prominent, because then you kind of know how to show your partner, or how your partner can show you their love. And at the bottom is some of my contact information if you're interested in it. Okay. So at this point, I just asked for questions, but obviously this is a recorded presentation, and so we don't have time for questions right now, but I'm always open to questions. You can email me at ryan.plash@discoverymentalhealth.com. I'll put this back on the screen in case you wanted to look at it again. Or you can call me. My number is listed there too. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of this presentation today. And I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it helps. I'm over at PHA Wellness seeing folks. I have openings on Sundays and Mondays. The classes and the groups, they're coming. I'm working on them right now. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much.